Welcome back to the Empowered Women Project podcast. This is episode 2, and today we are speaking to another empowered woman, Kat Cubie. So she is a mum of 3, broadcaster, co-author of a book all about sleep and how to coach your babies with their sleep, and she also is the co-host of an award-winning podcast herself, which is called The Sleep Mums, which I highly suggest you check out. Today we've had a really interesting discussion all about, sadly, misogyny, keeping your children safe on social media, and sleep and motherhood and all sorts of things. So I think it's going to be an amazing episode. So yeah, enjoy. Welcome to the Empowered Women Project podcast. It's such a mouthful, but I came up with it, but it works.
It does work.
I'm so glad you could join us. I'm a massive fan of the work that you do, and I just feel like who better to come on than a mum, broadcaster, author, somebody who runs their own social media, has 3 kids, not 2. I thought you only had 2. And I'm like, oh, you're just one more than me. No, you've got 3. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
I'm delighted to be here and considered an empowered woman.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm aiming for.
Yeah, I guess I would just start with what we were talking about just there. Broadcasting. How did you get into broadcasting? That's one of the questions that a lot of the women who follow us have been asking. How did it all start? How did your career start?
A sort of long and winding road, I guess. I remember going to a talk at the BBC in Glasgow, when I was, a teenager, and I knew I wanted to be a presenter, and I kind of cornered one of, I can't even remember who it was now. I cornered someone. I was like, how do I do this? And they were like, oh well, someone overheard me talking in the bathroom, and they offered me a job, and I was like, right, okay, so. How can I make that happen?
That's so cloak and dagger.
Totally. I was like, so that's not really a route I can follow. So I applied for all the jobs at the BBC, because the BBC was the only place that I thought, I'm going to get to be a presenter at. From series, I had no idea about TV production. So from series producers to runners, applied for them all.
No. You just went on the site and went down every job.
Basically, hundreds of applications.
That's manifesting.
Yeah, totally. That was where I was going with it. And I ended up getting work experience, so not the series producing job. And I got work experience in psychology, because that's specialist factual, because that's what I'd done my degree in.
Oh, that's what I'm doing my degree in. There we are, great minds.
Yeah,
or trying to be greater minds.
Literally, or finding out about other ones, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started off doing work experience in specialist factual, learned loads, moved into children's, had an audition, and got down to the last 2 for it. And that was the point that I was like, oh, actually, this is something I can do. And it kind of grew from there. And I got an agent and started presenting a bunch of stuff. And what else was I doing? I was doing a lot of voiceover work. But living in London was fun, and it was exhilarating, but it was hard. And my best friend had just had her first baby, and I kind of missed being in Scotland. I had got to the point where I was a little bit angry all the time. I thought maybe I need to move back to Scotland to have a wee bit of space.
Do you think there weren't as many opportunities in Scotland then?
Oh, there definitely wasn't. So I missed that wee bit out, actually. Just when I was applying to the BBC and all of those jobs, I managed to get a meeting with someone up here, and they said basically at that point, they said, if you want to get into broadcasting, you need to go down to London. Okay. And I was gutted, because actually I wanted to be here. And I had a brilliant time in London, and it's a fantastic city, and I made amazing friends and did have great opportunities. But when an opportunity came up to come back to Scotland, I was delighted, and also, as I say, it meant that I got to see my best pal and her first baby.
So obviously there's a lot of chatter at the moment around misogyny within that industry, and we don't have to go into too much detail if you don't want to, with Greg Wallace and whatnot. And I've just been kind of following the narrative with that. Do you think that you've ever felt like that? Was it a man's world when you first got into it?
Oh, massively. I mean, it was it is a funny industry, because obviously there have been men in charge for a long time and they call the shots. And that's at a lot of levels higher up. And there are a lot of, like there is in lots of industries, there are a lot of women lower down the rungs, if you like. And so I think it is rife. It has been a lot of men making decisions. Certainly I always felt that, you know, when I was having all these meetings in London, they were mostly with men of a certain age, basically saying whether I was good enough or not. Mm-hmm. And I actually did a TikTok the other week about experiencing sexism in the entertainment industry. And I just told some quite honest stories about experiences I had, which I'm happy to go into if you want.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I couldn't believe like the vitriol that has come back at me from that TikTok of like, you know, like all that stuff.
Like, why did you not say it at the time?
Yes.
Are you trying to boost? Because, I saw Kirsty Alsop talking about it yesterday and people are like, oh, it's just a group of middle-class women coming out now. They could have said something at the time. But I'm really conscious that was there space for them to say anything
There
at
is
the
no
time?
danger. I was in my early 20s trying to make it as a presenter. There is no way that you could come out and say anything about situations that made you feel uncomfortable. But also there was a kind of idea that if you didn't go along with it, then you would lose out on an opportunity. You know, and it starts at the very, very bottom in that, like, when I started out on work experience, if you like, it was like make yourself indispensable, like be a dog's body. And that's, you know, that is how you work your way up. That is how you learn things, but you also learn that it's okay to be trodden on a wee bit, I think. People say it's banter, and that's what I was going to say. I think it is an unusual industry because quite often you are on short-term projects with people if you're making a TV show, and you become really close knit as a group. It is like a family kind of a situation, and yes, so banter can get maybe more close than you might do in a kind of office environment because it's not an office environment, and I can understand that those lines may be confusing for some people, but I think that as women we've spent a long time allowing those boundaries to be crossed so we don't actually know where they are within ourselves.
Yeah. And see, in terms of, again, we don't have to talk about it if you're not sure, but with the press and stuff like that, I know that they've taken things that you've said out of context or actually just made things up that you've said. And how did you handle that, and what was the backlash and stuff like that?
It's a horrible feeling not having ownership over...
Tell us firstly what happened, actually, because we tried about all this before and then the cameras are rolling and I'm like, right, let's tell everybody what happened.
So many, many, many years ago, I did an interview and they used words as a headline that were not ones I'd said, and it ended up going to press complaints and lawyers being involved and stuff. And I felt really... oh God, I don't want to be dramatic about it, but it felt like an assault without that sounding really...
No, I've been through it. It's horrific.
Because you just think everyone around thinks that that's what you think, or that's true. And it gave me such an insight, because it was a tiny, tiny thing, and it gave me such an insight into what it is for both really big celebrities that experience being absolutely pummeled by the press and must feel like that on a constant basis and completely question themselves, because you start to go, oh, is that me? Did I say that?
Yeah.
Like,
it's like gaslighting.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally. So it made me feel so sad for the people that experience that, but also for the people that are not in an entertainment space. So like there was a lot of a kind of feeling of like, you know, if you put yourself out there in that industry, then you're asking for it a wee bit. If you're trying to be a celebrity, or if you're trying to be famous. Although, to be honest, most people, and certainly for me, I never had this desire to be famous. I just really like telling stories and talking to people, 100%. And I'm good at it. Yeah. Like I'm a communicator, and so it felt always like, well, just because these are my skills doesn't mean that, you know, I should be. I'm asking to
Yeah.
to
Do you
get.
feel like that narrative sort of took away from those skills that you've just mentioned and made it all about something it's not about?
Yes, definitely. I think that is often the case, though. And I think we do use. You're kind of taught to use your womanly wiles, if you like, to get things, and so I'm also aware that you can kind of be lambasted for that victim blaming thing of like, oh, you were wearing like
Well, you did do your makeup a certain way.
Exactly.
You did have your legs, so
Exactly.
you did do X, Y, and Z, and you can't. You're actually damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Um,
This is a massive segue, and I hope I like I say, I like to tell stories,
like
so
a
I
segue.
may embellish this a wee bit. But when I was living in London, I think this is obviously it's a much more traumatic story, but I think it's just a sign of what women manage on a daily basis. So when I first moved to London, there was someone who was assaulting and murdered women in the area that I was living in, and he was eventually caught. We know he was a he. He was targeting women with long blonde hair that wore it in a ponytail. So long blonde hair that wore it in a ponytail because he was grabbing them by the ponytail.
Whoa.
And I probably not worn my hair in a high ponytail since then because walking around I was so traumatized by this idea and it's like that those things are constantly in your head, I think, as a woman.
Yeah, that's scary. And also, it's not even just that. It's more like I was watching a wee piece this morning, and there was two women trying to film about talking about their experiences of feeling intimidated by men in public spaces. And as they were trying to film, a guy sat down. I'll need to send you the TikTok later. A guy sat down and was like, it's a public space, I'm going to sit here. The irony of a man interrupting a situation where women are literally trying to talk in a public space about not feeling safe in public spaces, it's so meta.
Totally. Well, like when I put this TikTok out talking about sexism in the entertainment industry.
Which was brave, by the way, because I'm sure that...
I actually couldn't believe, I was like, because I don't normally put that controversial thing, because actually I choose not to because I don't really want to get backlash.
No,
I don't have the headspace for it.
No.
But
not with 3 young kids, you do not. No.
But I felt like it was something important that I had to say. And then, I kind of took notifications off my phone, as you do. And then I went back and I was like, oh my God, there's like hundreds of comments. I was like, and I messaged my pal saying exactly that. The irony of me talking about sexism in the entertainment industry and then being absolutely lambasted by a bunch of men on the internet
being
for talking
sexist.
about it being sexist. It's like, and also you just go, can you not, it's meta, but can you, and so there is just no point responding.
No. There's no point, absolutely. You've put out there what you wanted to say. It's an important thing. And I think for young women coming up in the industry, they need women like you who are talking about that stuff so that they feel like they're not alone if they're maybe starting at the bottom and trying to cut their teeth or whatever. Is it cut their teeth? Is that the phrase?
Yeah.
If they're trying to get their,
find
their way.
That's
cut their teeth in the media,
then
then they need to see these women like yourselves. And there's so many I can think of in my mind now, strong women who are working in media, which is just amazing.
I just don't think, I don't think younger generations would put up with it though. And that, the weird thing is we're sort of in this sandwich generation of stuff where we're looking back on stuff and being like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
Whereas the older generation, because there were quite a few older women, I presume, in fact, they said they were on this TikTok saying, back in the 70s and 80s, we just rolled our eyes. And you're like, actually talking about something pretty serious? Did you just roll your eyes? Because if you did, that is what has allowed it to continue for so long. So,
And again, another segue, but I've actually never watched Love Actually till last night. And I was like, right, it's time. It's a Christmassy film. Let's watch it. Made my boyfriend watch it with me. And even looking at Martine McCutcheon in that film, right, we were all fed. She's fat, she's overweight, whatever. She's absolutely beautiful, looks slim to me through these eyes. It was just crazy because that's the world that we grew up in. Being told that get the thigh gap.
Bridget Jones, being,
Britney Spears when in 2008, because they said she had a pot belly and all the rest of it. And I look at that now and it's just mind blowing that we grew up in that. No wonder.
That we were meant to have Special K 3 times a day.
Remember that. Red berries though, and it's 3 times a day, especially.
That's your treat.
We've grown up, and you just look at I suppose you look at your daughter, and I look at mine now, and I just think, like, no, never in a million years.
But I do think we have different versions of that now anyway. And so it's like, as much as you like to think so, like, because having said, oh, you know, back in the 70s and the 80s, it was like this. And I'm going, actually, is it worse now because we have this thing called the internet where, you know, where people can say their piece directly to people and without any repercussions and without even having to show their face. Like,
and where does that governance like start and end, do you think? Because I had another person the other day that had just set up a profile, blank profile, no profile picture, no profile name, who were kind of starting again with a wee bit of trolling. And I thought, where is the governance for that sort of thing? These people just walk away as if they've not just harmed the person on the receiving end.
I don't know how you find with your daughter though, like as a parent, you know, when I'm talking to my kids about bullying at school, or, you know, just walk away, just try and ignore it, talk to other people. And also more with my daughter because she's at that age, but saying, you know, if someone's being not nice to you or you feel like that, you've always got to think about what's going on for them. And that's not apologising for them, but where are they at in their life that is leading them to be this unpleasant to you? Because I always think that someone's headspace is obviously what leads them to do that. You know, it's the roll down. Think happy thoughts and they'll shine out of your face. And if you're not thinking happy thoughts, then absolutely
come out in other ways.
Shit that'll come out on the internet is what happens. And that's what I try and imagine. I think when you do get like crappy comments or whatever, just think, what's that person like sitting in their living room typing this out? Who even are you? Or whatever it is that they're saying that they think is going to be so offensive. Like, is that making them feel good? And if it is, that's
actually really powerful. I'd never even given space to think about my trolls and how, like, what was going on for them. You all think it's about me, and like you said earlier, I started to think, well, maybe I am this, that and the other, maybe I am not liked, maybe I'm you just start to believe it, because if there's enough clout behind something, you just believe it. It's just the way we are. But
I think that happens when you're in a vulnerable headspace, and that's what you can. Right now, you're saying, you know, you're a mum, you have different responsibilities, you're in a healthy relationship, and you're in a much happier space. Yeah, and I totally can relate to that as well. Like, I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, you know, I'm happy with, you know, I've got a great partner, I've got lovely kids, I absolutely love my job. It's much easier for me to both say something about things that have happened in the past, but also be confident enough to, when people do say shit things, to go, all right, okay, well, that's what you think.
But I'm actually fine.
But I'm okay.
I'm actually fine
exactly.
because I've got my stuff. So, on a wee bit of a more positive note, I was going to say to you, how do you balance we've not even got onto your podcasting book yet, which we will get onto. How do you balance everything that you do? Having 3 kids, doing the job you do, it's a demanding job in terms of having to show up. Your outfits are always slay. So, like, can I say slay at my age? I did. How do you manage to juggle it all?
I don't.
It is juggling.
There's a massive amount of juggle that goes on, and you know, as I say, I'm lucky. I've got a supportive partner, and I have amazing childcare. We have a nanny that helps out with the kids because there's 3 of them, and the hours of my show, I can't do school pickup, and I couldn't do it without her, and I couldn't do it without him. Yeah. But that doesn't take away from the insanity of it all.
100%. What do the kids think of your job? Do they think it's cool?
Like what my youngest, my 3-year-old, was playing with some toys the other day, and I was like, oh, where's the zebra off to? And he was like, oh, she's going to work. And I was like, what does she do? I was like, she plays music and presses buttons. I was like, that's a great job. That's what I do.
And I must ask you, is Taylor Swift or Santa more popular?
Do you know what? Santa is winning that one.
Okay, interesting.
I'm really surprised, actually, having put that out there.
I'm a new Swiftie. I'm new. Like, I took my 14-year-old niece to the Eras tour, and I was converted in that moment. Yeah. Just wow. Who can put on a performance for that long? And
wow. I mean, she is an empowered woman. I just love how, like, unashamedly, excellent
she is. And amazing. Yeah,
totally.
exactly. So I've been listening to your podcast and it's called The Sleep Mums, is that right?
Yeah.
With a paediatric doctor or nurse, is it that she is, Sarah?
Sarah, well, she's a paediatric sleep consultant.
Amazing. And she helped you with your own journey.
She
right?
did. She helped me with Indy, who still doesn't particularly love sleep.
So that's just a lifestyle choice for Indy.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
cool. And what has been the reception of the podcast? I feel like it's something really essential, like in terms of, it wasn't around when I first had Ruby, but those night times, like, you're right, it's not accessible to read a big giant book, like, which is what I've heard you saying. You need something you can listen to, a bit of comfort from.
Although we did then write a giant book. No.
Yeah, no. But what's the reception been? If people loved it?
Amazing. Good. I mean, honestly, it was, like these things that just come about sort of serendipitously. At the start of the pandemic, we planned to do a couple of episodes, partly as a sort of escapism from being at home with, 2 small children at that point in time, and Sarah had 3, and a way to support parents who we knew were not having access to the services that they would normally, and it just totally blew up. And it was such a lovely thing for me and Sarah to do together as pals, and also to utilise both of our individual skills. And we're not doing the podcast just now, and we just WhatsApp each other all the time, like, I miss you. It was so nice to have that regular date with each other that we got to.
And it's funny how that it is serendipitous, because even listening to the podcast, she's like, I always wanted a book, but then I didn't have those skills. And like, you being a journalist, and then you could learn from her. And it's just like such a nice thing, the way it all came about.
Yeah.
And what would you say to any mums that are going through it just now, who think that it's never going to end? The sleep regressions, the no sleep, the feeding through the night when they're not hungry.
Isn't.
How old is Indy?
9.
Wow. Okay, so nearly a decade of no sleep.
No,
You're looking good though for that.
I think there is a wee bit of acceptance that sleep has changed forever for you when you become a parent. That doesn't mean that you have to accept it being awful for ages, but it is always going to be changing, and there will always be things like that. Like Indy was up in the night for a wee. She still wants me to get up with her because she's scared to go to the toilet by herself. So, and that can happen really regularly. And so if you then got that times 3, it is almost like newborn years.
And is it what they say, where it just gets easier the more you add on, or is that a myth?
No, totally. That is how I think it is. I really do.
What,
think
easier when you add, because you're just adding them onto the clan?
I think it's easier because you care less, not like about the actual children, but like you're just like, oh fuck it, it's fine.
Yeah, my sister actually said that by number 3. She says, baby-led reading, what? She's like, that child is eating Domino's crusts and everything.
I think you're just a lot more reasonable about it all, and who knows, we'll find out in the future.
Yeah, literally, it's all a learning curve.
I think there's nothing that you sort of realise that whatever you do, you're probably they're gonna blame you for something. So
yeah, you can't not cause any trauma as hard as you try.
Yeah.
And I feel like in the early days of having Ruby, I was trying to get myself to buggy fitness classes, baby sensory classes, trying to meet other mums. But I really found it. I've got my mum tribe now. We've got a group chat called Wine Moms, and we're fine. But in that moment, I found it really hard to find community, because I feel like nobody was talking about the real stuff.
Yeah.
Is that something you found, and why you think the podcast was quite important as well?
I think I was unbelievably lucky with my group of moms that I had a WhatsApp chat, still have a WhatsApp chat with. And we were kind of like from one of these like, NCT groups that we did before. Before we'd had the babies, and then it was like as each one had a baby, we had a like splinter group for the ones that were going to be like, what the fuck was that? So that we didn't freak out the other people.
Oh, that's good. That's good, because actually the guys were telling me earlier that there's a podcast filming in here now who their podcast is all about birth trauma, and I'm like, I'm not ready to go there yet, but I'll listen at some point, because that's another big thing that people don't really talk about, is they're traumatic, possibly for the most part, first births. But yeah, it's good to hear that you found your mum community, because I definitely feel like the mums I was surrounding myself initially anyway, maybe now it's a lot better. Initially, it was very much no, we got a great night's sleep, or no, she only eats
Yeah.
avocados, or no, and I know that that's, you know, coming from maybe that child does only eat green food and sleeps right through the night, but I just felt there was this wee bit of hesitancy to be honest about the brutalness of
massively. I think I definitely experienced that a lot at classes and things like that, and I think everyone is massively insecure about the choices, you know, in the same way we're talking about getting to be a woman of a certain age, Greg, that you you become a parent of a certain, like, you know, once you're in there, you kind of feel more confident with the choices that you made. But right there in the beginning, you're insecure about them. So you're not judging other people on the decisions that they make, but you're trying to reinforce your own by suggesting that maybe theirs aren't the right ones. And actually,
100%.
so again, a wee bit like what we're talking about, the trolls, you know, when people are really forceful with their opinions like that, it usually comes from a wee bit of insecurity, I think. Or maybe I'm just completely deluded, but this is how I go around thinking about the world.
My boyfriend tells me every day I'm Delulu, and he's got that off TikTok, and I'm like, please don't be a man in your 40s telling me I'm Delulu, get off TikTok. But
he's got the riz though, right?
Exactly, he has got the riz. He loves it. Sometimes he'll randomly just go slay, and I'm like, oh, no, please no. So with having a 9-year-old, I feel like that's quite a difficult age because she's going to want to start exploring social media and stuff like that. I mean, it's horrible in my mind to even think that it's as young as that.
Yeah.
But what's going to be, have you got a plan for any of that? What are you thinking about her getting on social media?
Well, she has a very good friend who is already and is doing TikToks, and they...
At 9, it's too hard for me to get my head around.
I know. And so we've had some kind of... She's quite an anxious... I always worry a wee bit about saying too much about... Now she's at this point of sort of talking about her.
That's fine.
But like, we have had conversations about what happens to information you put out on the internet, and how, without wanting to totally freak her out, that there are obviously good people out there and there are bad people, and to be wary of it. And we've talked a lot of that through, and it's, you know, it's a hard balance because it's something that she is, all of our kids are going to have to, like, they're going to grow up with. Yeah. They're going to need to understand. Like, my sister's kids are quite a bit older, and they went to a school which was completely free with, like, internet. They taught them about how to use it rather than there being any parental controls and stuff on it. And
that's like different.
Yeah, it had some. It threw up some interesting things, shall we say? And but also a kind of understanding of the fact that that's going to be out there, and you know, it's like being streetwise. You want them to be webwise, without that sounding like some sort of naff like campaign that I'm creating there. But I really, really appreciate, like, the mums that have created a smartphone-free childhood and the campaigning that they're doing, because it's allowed me to say to her and others that, you know, we won't let them, at this point in time, we won't let them have social media until they're 16 because that's what we feel is right. But, you know, it's always a moving goalpost, isn't it, as a parent? So
100%.
And she'll probably be having a tantrum. I'll be like, all right, okay, God, fine.
She like, buy me expensive skincare. You're like, why? Please still play with your baby dolls.
She just got her ears pierced, and like she has been asking since she was 6, and I'd always said 12. And so
you've met in the middle.
Well, kind of like, but I'm like, you know, so I am aware that these things change because, and that is the thing, whether it's sleep or ear piercing or whatever, you've kind of just got to do what is right for you and your family at that moment in time, and it's very hard to say what that is going to be.
It's going to work for one.
Exactly.
It's like one shoe doesn't fit all, or whatever they say. And are they teaching the kids in school about social media? Is there enough?
No,
are they doing enough?
No, I don't think so.
I feel like they need to be
she's
having
at amazing primary school that is we are really like chuffed to bits with, and they do a lot about conflict management, so maybe they are, but in IRL, if you like, rather than online at this point in time, although she's doing coding.
Cool.
So I know.
Cool. If we could take her back to a time when we all had MySpace, she could like do her layouts and all the rest of it, and Bebo. I always wonder where all our stuff went on the Bebo cloud.
What was the name of the guy on MySpace that welcomed everyone?
The wee guy,
who was always your first friend.
I can't remember. Someone can let us know in the comments. I forget, but he was always your first friend, wasn't he? But then Bebo, remember you had your 10 favourites? Like, and you could move.
I didn't do Bebo.
Okay, so you
Who
didn't
am
do
I?
Bebo. Who are you? So you never shared the love with anyone.
No.
But you are doing it now. So and you work on heart, so it's fine. Yeah, heart, exactly. But on Bebo, you could actually change who was your top 10 besties. And you could move order as well. So you could be like, one day, if you had a fallout with somebody, they're demoted to number 4 and you've moved like someone else to number 1.
My daughter does that in paper form, so she's like kind of old school. I'm like,
Love
I
that.
think this is a bit harsh. Like, and she was like, but everyone else is doing it. I'm like, that doesn't make it okay.
She's like, no, Rosie in the year below is never 2.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, oh, big mood. Listen, thank you so much
Not at
for
all.
coming to chat to me today. I feel like we've covered so many interesting things, and I'm sure there's going to be so much useful information in there for our audience of empowered women.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy.
When you